Hey guys, the new ban list was recently announced, and as usual when a new ban list comes out, I like to make a short video just kind of going over it, informing people, and also giving some initial impressions on the cards. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in this ban list. Not too many cool things, not like a lot of cool new stuff to play around with, but there is some interesting stuff, and I definitely want to get into it and talk about how it's going to affect the game. So first off, we're going to take a look at the cards that are becoming limited. There's no cards that are getting banned in this ban list, nothing new for that. But as far as limiting goes, so they're taking Glow Up Bulb off the ban list. They're making it limited. Very interesting. I think they're trying to, keep backing up synchros. This is a nice buff for certain decks that rely on it. Synchron decks will make great use of a card like this. So I'm definitely in support of that. I think as they, add in XYZ archetypes and stuff like that, they really should consider, making a lot of these easy tuners, have access to them. So I think it's really nice to have cards like this, and I want to see, what decks are going to run this and make use of it. Could be interesting in some plant decks as well. So now a big hit for Infernities. Infernity Archfiend is getting limited. I think this might be a bit too much for Infernities. I know they're very strong, but it's going to be tough. This is, their key card, so they're going to have to kind of build the deck around kind of different variations to make plays. And I just hope the deck is still alive after doing, things like this, after limiting, one of their trap cards. And that was the big thing. This card searches out those traps, but when those get limited, and it's going to be very tough for Infernity. So I kind of feel for them. I'm not sure if I agree with making this limited, but we're going to have to see how it affects their deck in the long run. So probably the biggest thing about this ban list is Raigeki is coming off. It's going to limited. It's very, very interesting that they're bringing this back after so long. There's a lot of things that you got to consider when they're taking a card like this from being banned to limited. Destruction isn't as powerful as it used to be, so cards like Dark Hole are fine. Raigeki probably can be fine because of that same reason, and it's really not going to hurt the game. Also, they're giving the ability to overextend in this game, with pendulums and a lot of those swarming archetypes and a lot of things, going on. So I think Raigeki makes a lot of sense. They want to allow people to swarm and then allow people to take away that swarming. So they have cards like Raigeki and Exciton Knight. And you notice they're not limiting Exciton Knight. They want people to be able to deal with a lot of monsters on the field. So I think that makes sense from their perspective. And I do like that this is being limited. We really have to see how it plays out, but I really don't think it'll be like a horrible thing for the game to have access to this. I think people will have to be a little more careful with what they're doing. And now Soul Charge is becoming limited. I'm sure a lot of people saw this coming. I agree with this. Semi-limited might have been okay. Limited is probably fine as well. It's just a bit too powerful. The life point and the battle phase cost is not enough. If there was another cost, or there was a different cost, maybe a limited special summoning cost or effect cost or something like that. But overall, it's really strong of a card because certain decks take advantage of things that don't care about the negatives of this card. And it's also a very big concern with Teller Knights. That's a big issue, and I could definitely see them limiting this to worry about a deck like that. Super Poly is also becoming limited. I'm a little surprised at this one because Shade Owls haven't really had enough time to really start, getting rid of their cards. But that's probably why they aren't like touching the Shade Owl cards yet. And this card overall, they just, I guess, are not liking currently in that deck type. It will be an interesting card when we get those other hero cards and other stuff. So Super Poly is definitely a thing to consider with other deck types. But Shade Owl's obviously the main one to think about with the limiting of this. And then Blackwing Gale is becoming semi-limited, so I really agree with this. This is fine. Blackwing Gale is not really used outside of Blackwings that much anymore. It used to be a really good tuner, but not, as much anymore. So I really like that Blackwings are getting a bit of power because it's not like they're a top-tier deck or anything, so it's nice for them to have access to one of their more powerful tuners. And then Gorz is becoming semi-limited. I do really like this because I feel like back row is so heavy these days. I really like the idea of kind of rewarding players that don't have as much back row. And it's nice to have a last resort card like Gorz that's not super powerful, but just a useful card overall. I do really like this card, and I think semi-limited is fine for it. And then Ceasefire, another card that's kind of aimed at people that are overextending a bit much. Bumping up burn decks. I think burn decks are probably the only decks that use this, so I'm not sure if I agree with buffing burn decks, but it's just a nice card in general to kind of hurt people that are putting way too much on the field. So that's kind of nice in that regard. And then Transmigration Prophecy is going to semi-limited. I do agree with this. This is nice for certain decks that can search out and can just want to get key cards back to the graveyard. So there's a lot of decks I really like to use with a card like this that could be useful. You know, something like Gladiator Beast that can search out. It would be really nice to, you know, get Bastiri back to the deck and just do some big plays with that. And I really like some of the things. You don't see this card used that often, so I think it's fine that it becomes semi-limited. It's not a big card for many decks, but it's really good tech in certain ones, so nice to have. And then Coach Soldier Wolfbark is just going completely off the list from limited. I guess they limited and realized it wasn't, you know, necessary to do that. I'm kind of up in the air with this one. I don't think Fire Fists are really able to compete with some of the newer deck types that are coming out. And I would like, you know, Beast Warrior decks to have access to some of that swarming power. It's kind of nice for them to do some additional plays, but it's tough to say. I think there's other cards that probably could benefit more from being, you know, taken from limited to buff them up. I don't think Beast Warrior decks necessarily need that much, but you know, could be nice. You know, I don't see those decks running 3 of this anyway, but you know, that's just my concern going forward. And then Magician of Faith is becoming off the list. You can run 3 of it. That's fine. You know, they put this at 1, then 2, and 3. They realized it's really not a big issue because the combination cards they already took out of the game. So it's a fine card. Not a lot of decks run this. Some cards that rely on, you know, 1 spell card, it's a nice card to have. So I think it's fine to put this at 3. And then 3 Reinforcement of the Army. That's definitely an interesting one. I'm a little worried about this. The thing about Warriors is that Warrior archetypes aren't that strong in general. But now we have cards like Teller Knights, and you know, if we get the new heroes and if we get the new heroics, you know, it's going to be very interesting. Also, some decks that just have warriors as to support them, like Evil Swarm and Constellars, and it's really tough. I don't know if I agree with this. I think semi-limited was fine with this card, but now some of these warrior decks or decks that use warriors are going to be super consistent, and you know, we went through that with Fire Fists, with Tenki, and that was a bit of a problem. Obviously, they aren't dealing with that, so they want to give it to other decks. But do they really want every deck in the game to be super consistent? I feel like that's kind of not really intuitive when you come to a card game. You do want some luck involved, but that's currently my opinion. I'm a bit concerned about this, but it definitely will be fun to see some of those lower tier warrior decks with insane consistency. And then finally, Formula Synchron is going to 3. So this was a big concern for me when it first started out, but I think it's kind of fine. Again, they want to bump up synchro decks. I feel like some decks are going to be able to make use of this really strongly to make plays that are focusing on like Quasar, really high level synchro. So that's the main concern that you want to keep an eye out. But because of all the new deck types and all the other crazy things that are coming into the game, I think it's fine to have a card like this. I don't know if people are going to run 3 of this. Maybe those synchro decks that are going to try to summon like 2 Quasars in one turn, but it's a bit much. I'm still kind of thinking about the decks that'll use this, so maybe some decks will run 3, but I think it's fine. It's not, you know, a broken card by any mean. It just gives those synchro decks some more plays, and it will be cool to see if this is broken. Probably won't be, though. So those are my initial impressions on the ban list. You know, very early. We'll see as it plays out, you know, through the months, whether these cards get hit again. You know, things get changed around all the time. Like Wolfbark, you know, got limited, then put back. So it's a really big concern. They probably didn't want to hit, you know, some of the newer decks yet. So it makes a lot of sense that certain cards they are hitting. Looking forward to using Raigeki. Not a lot of other things that are too big of a deal, but there's some interesting stuff to play around with. I would really love to hear what your guys' opinions are on any of the cards that got changed in this list. Let me know in the comments below. Just, you know, really love to hear your opinions, and I'm really excited to start building with some of the new choices that they're making. But that's about it for me. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later.